We are talking to Tim Shanahan today, the author of Running with the Champ, My 40-Year Friendship with Muhammad Ali. Welcome to Radara, and we are so excited to talk to you and talk to you about the book as well.
Thank you, Manish. It's a pleasure. Like I mentioned, this is my very first time on a radio interview, and if I go off on tangents, please reel me in because I want to make sure I remember the question.
No problem. Sit back and relax and enjoy.
Okay.
So how was being a friend with the legend inside and outside the ring, or close enough being the ropes, so to speak, and why did you write this book?
Well, the way it was as far as how I met Muhammad is, first, I was living in Chicago as a medical product sales rep, and I was living with my wife, Helga, and I belonged to an organization called Athletes for Better Education, and that was a nonprofit group that was helping all of the best athletes from the slums of Chicago. In other words, the low-income area high schools where they had great athletes that never made it to college because of their grades. So we hired tutors to tutor all of the, we had 50, I think, at one time. 50 great athletes were all state and were ready to get a scholarship for college, and we want to make sure that they had the grades to stay in college and to keep their scholarship. So we hired tutors. That was on 2 days a week, on a Friday night, Friday evening, and then Saturday morning. And we had also practical application of their sport. We had professional athletes from Chicago come in and tutor them in the sport itself, like the Chicago Bulls, the Chicago Bears, Cubs. We had athletes come in and help them. That went very well. We improved their grades, and by the time they got their scholarship, they were, at least a C average. So we were very, very proud of that. And every month, we would have a motivational speaker come in and speak to the students at an awards dinner for people who were improved their grades, for the kids. So I was in medical sales, and one of my good customers was Dr. Charles Williams. And Dr. Williams heard about the organization, and he said, well, if you're getting motivational speakers to come in, athletes, celebrities, he said, why don't you get Muhammad Ali? And I said, well, that's a good idea. How do I do that? He said, well, I'm Muhammad Ali's personal physician. I'll call him. He'll come out. So the next thing I know, Dr. Williams calls me and said, hey, Muhammad Ali is going to be in Chicago. He's looking for a new home in Chicago, and he'll be there on the day that your monthly dinner is. So I said, well, terrific. So he came and gave a talk at our dinner, and the rest is history.
And that history is 40 years long, and what a long time that you had there in the friendship.
Yeah.
How was it to get to know him in the early years? How did the relationship evolve, the friendship evolve?
It was so natural. I was scared to death to meet him, but after I did, everything came natural. In the book, I'm standing at the front door, and there's stained glass windows on both sides of the door, and so you can actually peek in. I rang the doorbell and was waiting for him to come to the door, so I peeked in the window, and there on the top of the stairs, coming down the stairs in this beautiful robe with a hood, was the greatest. And as he was coming down the stairs, he looked at the door, and I quick jerked back so he didn't see me. And now I'm nervous, and I say, what should I call him? Should I call him Mr. Ali? Should I call him Champ? Should I call him Ali? I started getting nervous. I said, oh, boy, here goes. He opens the door, and I said, hi, Mr. Ali. My name is Tim Shanahan. He said, come on in. I know who you are. So we walked to the front stairs, sat down on the fourth stair, and began a conversation about the organization. He said, I like you. You're trying to help people just like me. And he said, I want to help you. And so anytime you need my help, you call me, okay? So right away, from the first words out of his mouth, he said, I can call him anytime for his help. So that made me feel relaxed and at ease. And from then on, I can guarantee you that he treats everyone the same. So I was no different than anybody else who was walking through the front door. So that really put our friendship in motion. And I found out as we started running together and, seeing each other more, I found out that we had similar interests. And he told me when I was telling him, I bought him a cassette of Smokey Robinson once, and for his birthday, and I bought him a cassette and a book about friendship. So those are two. And he said, "You like Smokey Robinson?" And I said, "Oh, I love him." And he said, "You dance good too," because I showed him some dance moves from James Brown. He said, "I think you were an N-word in your previous life." So he has a code name for me for that. When there's company around or strangers, he'll say Trigger. He goes, "What's happening, Trigger?" Or "What it is, Trigger?" And we had that. So I know what he's saying, but the other people don't. But anyway, that was a very natural beginning of our friendship. And boy, did he make me feel at ease. The very first sentences out of his mouth, it was beautiful.
Yeah, you have an inside view, but not only you have an inside view, but you also have a close view that most people would never have in their life other than their close family members. How do you think that his professional career evolved, and what were some turning points that you would like to share with our listeners that they may not be aware of or may not have appreciated enough?
I think the evolution of his career, of course, was interrupted by the court case. Of course, he resisted going to Vietnam, going into the Army. And as Angelo Dundee often says, we were robbed of the greatest heavyweight champion of the world's greatest years. He said we were robbed of seeing the most gifted athlete that he has ever known or seen, of the best years of his career. And I agree. But, when I ask him about, why he did it, or are you resentful to the fact that the judges voted against you and ruled against you and kept you out of boxing for 3.5 years? That is absolutely the best years of his career that we never saw. And he said, well, I did what I believed was right, and they did what they believed was right. So that's what happened. So he always looks at two sides of the story. He's always balanced and fair. He always talks about justice, truth, and trying to find it. His big thing is he's always looking for wisdom. He said wisdom and truth are the two things that he searches for in life. And he always said that the reason I like you, Shanahan, is because you're serious when you have to be, but then you can play a fool like me. He said, remember, a wise man can always play a fool, but a fool can never play a wise man.
Very well said.
So I think the things that people don't know about Muhammad is that heavy lies the crown. He was, in 1978, Time magazine did a survey, and they had 25 headshots of the most famous people in the world. And this was 1978, so John Travolta and Donna Summer were involved, but people like the Pope, the Shah of Iran, President Carter, the Queen of England, just headshots. And they took it all over the world, all these photos. And Muhammad Ali, the people that recognized him were twice as much as the nearest one. I don't remember if it was the Pope or the Queen, but he was twice as many recognitions than these people. And one of the stories with this person from Time magazine taking the photo, he said, I even went into the rice paddies of Vietnam, and there's this old guy in the rice paddies, and I took on the water planks. He walked out to the guy, showed him the photos, and as soon as he got to Muhammad Ali, he did a fight pose. He gave a jab in a fight pose. So people could show the recognition of Ali just by doing a fight pose. So he had an advantage there. But anyway, that was an amazing story. So now he's the most recognized face on the planet. I asked Muhammad, this is serious. You have a big responsibility here. You are now the most famous face on the planet. What are you going to do now? And he goes, I'm going to, just what I was telling you, I'm going to look for truth and wisdom. And I'm going to find how I can use my fame to the best of my ability and to help all of the poor people in the world, white and black, those who need my help. And that's how he said it. Well, the reason I brought that up is because he was an insomniac, and the reason he didn't get sleep, so I would come in at 5:30 in the morning to run with him, and he was up eating breakfast.
Oh.
And no, he wasn't eating breakfast. He was having a cup of coffee before we ran. And I said, Muhammad, how long have you been up? Oh, I've been up for an hour. And I said, why can't you sleep? This is the second time I've come in here. And he goes, well, I can't sleep because I'm worried about the poor people in the world. And I'm trying to find out how I can help them. I believe in miracles. And I believe that there will be a miracle where we can feed all of the poor people in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I called Muhammad whenever they ask, you would ask me, well, how can you explain Muhammad, his personality, his character? And I always said that he is a man with a pure heart, and he's an enigma. The enigma part is you never know what stand he's going to take or what side of the argument he's going to be on, because he sees both sides all the time. He always looks for the good in the bad, and always is looking to try to help that bad person or that bad idea become good. So he's got a good heart.
Oh, good. In your experience, after knowing him for so long, do you think he was searching for truth and wisdom for a reason and not, let's say, search for peace or stability or sereneness or calmness or? Well,
see, he never thought of himself. I mean, you would be shocked to say that, of course, Muhammad loved money. He wanted to have money. Why? Because he wanted to give it away. He wanted to give it to people who needed it. He felt like he had the ability, the power to bring money in, and so with that ability, he had the ability to give it away just as easily. And he felt like the only thing that he really wanted, though, that he wanted for himself was a Rolls Royce. So whenever I talk about he never wanted anything for himself, that's the only thing. He said a heavyweight champion of the world has to drive a Rolls Royce. But any other things were always for his wife and his family, and not just for himself. And so when he said he believed in miracles, when he was young, he would lay on the front grass and look up at the stars and talk to God. And he believed that God was behind those stars, up in the universe, and that he would answer them when he was 11, 12, 13 years old. He believed God was there and he would answer them. And I said, did he? And he goes, no, he never answered. And I said, what were you asking him? He said, he would say, God, what do you want me to be in life? What do you need me for? How can I help you? And that at 11 and 12 years old is amazing that he's asking God how he can help God. So he always had this on his mind since he was young. So as far as I think people would be surprised that he worried so much about the poor, that, when he has this responsibility of the most famous face, he knew there was a big responsibility, and he wanted to use it to the best of his ability. As far as peace and serenity, he wasn't happy being serene and peaceful. He said that he always said that his middle name is controversy, and he loved it. He loved to be controversial. He loved to stir things up. He wanted people to think. When they had a position, he wanted to know why. Tell me why you take that position. When the judges ruled against him, they told him why, and he understood it. And he understood that there was a reason why his career was going to be taken away from him, and he faced jail time. But his character and integrity made him take that stand and take the consequences. So everybody has to admire him for that.
Mm-hmm. And early in your friendship, you had several occasions where you were invited to watch the old tapes, and you would see some of the old fights, and one of them was a very
George Foreman.
George Foreman, right.
Yeah, Muhammad had a whole library full of the fight tapes. He would watch the fight tapes all the time before a fight. So in other words, he would get fights from the challenger and always watch those old fights and figure out the guy's weaknesses. He's always looking, well, I can beat this guy. He's slow here, or he drops his left hand. He figures it out watching these fights. But he always also loves to watch his old fights for the joy of it, but also for improving his next fight. So he's always looking for weaknesses. He never saw his fights as great. He always saw it as a challenge and a war. It was a battle that he was in, and he never saw it as a glorious event. He only saw it as a challenge, and he meets the challenge by winning. He hated to lose. That was the one thing. He hated to lose. But when he did lose, he did it with dignity. He always complimented the opponent after he lost. Before the fight, promoting it, he's always putting them down. But after he loses, then he promotes the opponent as a good fighter because he lost to him. But the fight that you're talking about is the Rumble in the Jungle. That was 1974, the George Foreman fight. And we were watching the fight, and I, of course, my brother and I watched that fight at a closed circuit event, and the most dynamic, the most thrilling sport event that I have ever seen. And that even includes Joe Frazier in 71, and they called it the fight of the century in Madison Square Garden. But the fact that it was in Africa, that it was promoted so heavily, that George Foreman destroyed Ken Norton and Joe Frazier in 3 rounds. One was 1 round, and the other he knocked Frazier down 7 times. And these were Ali's biggest fights, and they were the toughest fights. He would rank like those two in the top 5 of his toughest fights. And George Foreman destroyed them. He was a 6'4", 235-pound giant with speed and fast hands. I mean, he was just punishing heavyweight, the most punishing heavyweight of all times. I mean, he was really a destroyer. So leading up to that fight, everybody was worried about Muhammad's health. They thought, oh man, this guy's going to kill Ali. He's older. Foreman was 24 and Muhammad was 32. So he was over his prime, and they felt like if Foreman can destroy Norton and Frazier, Ali doesn't have a chance. So everybody was fearful of him going into this fight. So after the first round, here we are watching the fight, and I said, after the first round, I said, "You look good. You were jabbing, you were hitting him, you were running. You look good. Why did you change your tactic?" He said, "After that first round, I was so tired." He said, "I can't do this for 15 rounds. I got to find out a different way of doing this." So the second round, he started out the same as the first round, did very well, and then all of a sudden, he goes on the ropes, and Angelo goes nuts. Angelo said, "Get off the ropes. He's going to kill you. Get off the ropes, champ." And he stayed on the ropes. And what Ali told me when we were watching the fight, he said, "Well, here's where I'm figuring out what to do." And I said, "Well, if I get on the ropes and I'll see if he can hurt me with his punches." So he gets on the ropes. Foreman is pounding away at him. I mean, they are really devastating punches, but he is blocking most of them with his elbows, arms, and hands. And he did block most of the punches, but some of them got in, and just powerful punches. So I said to myself, my brother and I said, "Oh man, he can't stand that. I mean, that's second round already, and he's getting pummeled." Third round, same thing. And when he's being pummeled by Foreman, Ali says, "George, I thought you were tough. I thought you were strong. Those punches don't hurt." "Oh no, you got to give me more, George." "George, that didn't hurt. You punched like a sissy. My Aunt Coretta can punch better than you." And he's trying to coax him to punch harder. So just so you know, I'm going to flash forward to the 7th round when he knocks Foreman out. No, I'll flash forward to the 6th round, the round before he knocks Foreman out. he's pounding away Foreman, and you can see that Foreman is just dead tired, and he's just he's just barely punching now. And you could see Ali say something to him, and George answer back. And I said, what did you say to him right there? He said, George, I'm disappointed. Is that all you got? Round 7's coming up. And George said, yep, that's about it. Before he went into the corner, George says, yep, that's about it. So anyway, the reason he did that is that he couldn't have lasted 15 rounds running from Foreman. And Foreman really surprised him. He said he actually could cut off the ring better than he thought. He was quicker than he thought on his feet. And he figured that if he had to run for 2 more rounds, he'd be dead tired. So he figured it out, and that's where the rope-a-dope was invented.
So he sized up his opponent and let him fritter away his energy and then punch him where it is weakest. Yeah.
He punched on. He goes, at the end of the 4th round, I said, what did you say there, Muhammad? I said, round 5. He was telling George that there was another round coming.
Were you ever privy to what led to the preparation and what was involved in getting ready for the fight mentally, physically, emotionally, in keeping himself calm and focused, rather, for the ultimate goal of winning?
Yeah, the one thing is that Muhammad needed motivation. So when he was preparing for fights, if he felt that the opponent wasn't a Joe Frazier or a George Foreman or a Kenny Norton, I mean, he was lax. He was lax as far as every day training hard. So leading up to, for instance, Leon Spinks in 1978, he didn't train hard at all. He loved to entertain people up at Deer Lake in the training camp, and he allowed the people to come in anytime they want. So there was always a crowd at the training camp, and he entertained. And he had celebrity friends come up and visit him: Diana Ross, Tom Jones, Michael Jackson. I mean, everybody would be coming up to visit him, and he would spend time with them. He would continue to do his training and workouts and running, but he didn't do it as hard. And he always did stay on his diet. He would cheat on it with ice cream sometimes, but he had a fantastic cook, Lana Shabazz, a wonderful woman that acted like Muhammad's second mother. She looked and was built like his mother, Odessa, but she was a wonderful woman. She really loved Muhammad and really treated him well as far as cooking the right things for him and getting him in shape for the fight. But as far as his motivation, he really is easily distracted. He is a spontaneous person. So if he's training hard and Tom Jones comes into the gym, well, he's sparring. He'll at the end of the sparring session will come over and forget about his training, come over and talk to Tom and have a good time. But yeah, as far as motivating him to prepare for a fight, it had to be the big fights. So the ones that were big, he really trained hard for. And how he prepared for it mentally was he would build up in his mind to promote the fight. He would build up in his mind some nasty comments about the opponent and keep building that up in his brain so he could be angry at the guy. Or when he promotes himself and he's bragging, he knows he has to answer to that once the fight starts. So that's why he does it. He knows that if he says this in public to the audience or to the listeners, and then the fight comes up and he doesn't perform, then he's in trouble. So that's one way he uses to motivate himself.
Mm-hmm. And of course, he had many celebrity friends, including Andy Warhol, John Travolta, and many others. And he insisted of seeing him. And I think you had to jump through the hoops to get him to John Travolta.
Right. We were watching at the brand new movie theater, the Water Tower Movie Theater on Michigan Avenue in Chicago. We went to see Saturday Night Fever, and with Muhammad and Veronica, and myself. My wife Helga was in Germany, so we went to see it. And after the movie, he said, "You know that guy?" And I said, "Travolta, yeah." he's on a TV series called Welcome Back, Kotter. I think this is only his second movie, but I know who he is, but I don't know him personally. I'd like to meet him someday. I bet you he's a regular guy, just like me." And I said, "Muhammad, nobody's a regular guy like you." And when I ended up tracking down Travolta's office, he had his own JTP production office in Burbank Studios, and I found out the number and called the place, and his personal assistant, Joan Edwards, answered. I talked to her, and I said, and here's what always happens when I call somebody and I'm saying, "I'm good friends with Muhammad Ali." No, I usually say this: "My name's Tim Shanahan, and I'm good friends with Muhammad Ali." And as soon as I start talking again, they go, "What's your name?" Because as soon as I mention Muhammad, they want to know my name. So I did that, and that's exactly what happened. Joan said, "What's your name?" "Tim Shanahan." And Muhammad and I just saw John's movie last week, Saturday Night Fever, and he would love to meet Travolta. Oh, okay. So anyway, it turns out that John's father was a professional athlete, Sam, and he loved Ali. And John, who wasn't an athlete, knew that and knew that his father loved, and his mother, actually, Helen, his mother, both of them loved Ali. So anyway, it ended up that I arranged for them to meet, and we were supposed to meet before this, but we went to the Leon Spinks second fight. So it's Ali Spinks 2, where Muhammad won the championship for the third time in New Orleans. And so we flew with John in his DC-3. He flew his own plane. It was a DC-3 to New Orleans. And Muhammad at that time was staying at the Marriott in New Orleans, but because of the crowd that was getting a little too distracting. I mean, there were too many people coming into the suite. So he wanted to get away. So he rented a private home to get away from the hotel. And he told me about it. He gave me the address, and he said, "I'm not staying at the hotel. Bring John to this the address." So we got a limo from the airport and drove to this address. And when we got there, Muhammad was out front in this private home, waiting for John. So we got out of the limo, go up to the front porch, and Muhammad started screaming, "John Travolta! Look at everybody! John Travolta's coming here to see me! Everybody, come on!" So the people were already on the porches because they knew Muhammad was staying there. So everybody ran over and surrounded Travolta and Muhammad. And look, can you believe it? John Travolta is on your street. This is your own private street, and John Travolta came to see you. John, tell him that you're happy to see them. So John goes, "Yeah, I'm happy to see you." So anyway, John wasn't expecting that, but anyway, they met. John stayed with us. We stayed at the private home, and 2 nights later, Muhammad won the championship for the third time, and they became fast friends. And eventually, when Muhammad moved to L.A., he bought a Rolls Royce in Los Angeles, and he said, "Let's take this for a test drive. Let's go to Travolta's in Santa Barbara." So we drove to, my wife, Helga, Veronica, and Ali drove to Travolta in Santa Barbara, and we had a great weekend with him.
Very nice. And one day, Michael and Tito Jackson knocked on the door.
That was a little different because Muhammad had met Michael and Randy, Tito, and Jermaine in Deer Lake. And so they already had known him, and they were now on tour. I forgot the name of that tour in 1979, but they were on a tour, and it stopped in mid tour. They came back to L.A. and they were performing at the Forum. So I knew this, and Muhammad knew it. But what happened was they called the house before I got there, and they said that they were coming over. So when I got there in the office, Muhammad knew they were coming, and he was going to surprise me. So he said, the gate rang the phone. So the front gate says, "You got your guests here." And he puts the phone down. He said, "Come here." He goes, "Come here, white boy. Come here." So we walked in and looked through the glass door, and up pulls a white Rolls Phantom. what did you call it? It was a Phantom One, I think, or whatever. It was a Rolls Royce, a white Rolls Royce, and Michael Jackson was driving, and Tito was a passenger. So they get out of the car, and Muhammad said, "Wait until they get up the stairs." So as soon as they got halfway up the stairs, Muhammad ran out, just like he did with Travolta. Michael Jackson is here, everybody! Michael Jackson came to see Muhammad Ali, and he stood up. There was nobody on the street except a gardener across the street, and he waved and said, "Hi, Michael." So anyway, that's how he greets people. He really is a celebrity admirer. I mean, he admires all smart people. I mean, he admires people who are heads of state, who are politicians, who are lawyers, who are, he says they're all smart compared to him. In other words, he really respects all these people. And celebrities, his favorite celebrities are all, if you want to know the favorite celebrities, it's the top three are George Foreman, absolutely number one. George Foreman, who would be a celebrity friend, he is the best friend for 40 years, like me. He has been Muhammad's best friend, and anytime they ask George about Muhammad, he goes, "Nobody loves Muhammad Ali more than George Foreman except Jesus Christ." and he says he just is honored to be Muhammad's friend. The second person is Billy Crystal, and the third person is Chris Christopherson. Those three guys have been Muhammad's close friends for over 40 years. So, but I would say, Robin Williams became very, very close to him through Billy Crystal. But he's pretty picky as far as close friends. He doesn't call or go after anybody as a friend. He will let them call him. So the people who were calling him were the ones that became close. Well, Michael Jackson, that was a good story. But he's a prankster. Muhammad would pull pranks on everybody: Billy Crystal, Chris Christopherson, Tom Jones, and Michael Jackson. And while we were there, well, I'll just tell you, the first thing that he did, he sat Michael down at the piano and he said, "Play me that song." He knew which song he meant, but he said, "Play me that song." He said, "Sing that song for me." And "I'll Be There" is the song. And Michael knew that Muhammad, that was his favorite song. So he just played the first verse. I didn't know Michael could play the piano, but he played the piano and he sang the first verse. And then they started talking, and then I had my Ghetto Buster there. That was a cassette radio, that portable radio, and I had a James Brown cassette on there. And while they were talking, I said, "Muhammad, tell Michael that I got James Brown on this cassette. Let's see if he can do the James Brown." Michael was doing the James Brown when he was 6 and 7 years old. So I put it on, and "I feel good," and doodle doodle doodle, and I put it as loud as I could. So Muhammad and I pulled back the carpet, pulled back the rug, and it was a wooden floor, beautiful floor. And Michael did the James Brown, and it was beautiful. Now, in the course of the next half hour, we're talking, and Michael has to go to the bathroom. So he goes into the hallway bathroom, and the door closes, and Muhammad quickly sneaks up to the door and puts all of his weight against the door so it won't open. So about maybe 3 minutes later, you see the door handle go chick chick chick. He's jiggling and he pushes, chick chick chick, and he's jiggling, and then after about 30 seconds, Muhammad runs back to the desk and sits in his chair. And Muhammad, before he did that, he could feel Michael Jackson bump the door with his shoulder. He could feel it. So he ran back to the desk, and the next thing he knew, Michael bumps the door with his shoulder, and it falls down. He comes out of the door, and he's on the floor. And Tito and Muhammad and I were laughing. He looked up, and he goes, "I've been had." He was telling Muhammad, "Muhammad, the door is stuck. Muhammad, I'm in here in the bathroom. The door is stuck." He was calling out.
He couldn't do the moonwalk.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So I think the other thing that you don't know about Muhammad during his fight career was that he had terrible pain in his hands. When he was training on the heavy bag, especially, and with sparring partners, He has nowadays he has arthritis, of course, because of the. But he broke his bones in his hand a couple times, and he had terrible pain, and he would have to have cortisone in his hands before fights. But one of the things that people notice that when they shake his hand for the first time, he has huge hands, but he's very gentle with the handshake. And one of the reasons is because it hurts his hand. People think, oh, it doesn't want to hurt my hand. He's has a very delicate handshake. Well, it's because his hands hurt too. So, as far as the things that I loved doing with him was cruising in his Rolls Royce. He had a convertible Rolls Corniche, and we put down the top and put in a cassette and drive up and down Pacific Coast Highway. I love to drive from Santa Monica to Malibu to Pepperdine University and go up in the hills and where Elvis lived. he lived on Bellagio Road up in Bel Air. But anyway, the fact that we were able to be alone and go out and listen to our favorite. I mean, I love Smokey, but Eddie Kendricks of Temptation was one of his favorites. He loved falsetto singers. I could sing falsetto, and he always wanted me to sing certain songs. But the Stylistics with Russell Tompkins, the Shy-Lights with Eugene Record, even Brian Wilson, he loved those voices, and he couldn't do it, so he always admired the fact that I could sing it for him. The other things is he always was deep in his thoughts. One thing that happens is when we're driving together and I don't say a word, we could be driving for 15, 20 minutes and I don't say a word, and neither does he. And he said that's when you know you're best friends, when you don't have to say a word to each other. And he said one thing that I really was touched by, he said, good friends listen to what you say, best friends listen to what you don't say. And that was a moment in my life that I'll always remember.
And of course, you had many opportunities to be engaged in a professional relationship, but you not only resisted, but you also avoided to endure the personal relationship.
Yes. My family, my friends, my colleagues, I didn't tell anyone that I was friends with Muhammad. My family knew that I knew him, but they didn't know my relationship with him. So the main reason is, like, if I was a medical products sales manager, and my customers were heart surgeons and cardiologists, and my colleagues were very good medical product salespeople that were dedicated to their job. I felt like if I told them, oh, I'm friends with Muhammad Ali, that would get in the way of my profession. So anytime they would see me, they would tell a doctor, oh, that's Tim Shanahan, he's a friend of Muhammad Ali, which would get in the way of why I'm there. And so I felt it, and I never regretted it. I always, and to this day, I love the fact that I was able to do that.
It took a tremendous judgment on your part, and also obviously you understood how to separate the two and still be the real friend, which nowadays most celebrities have a very difficult time in connecting or finding anyone.
That when Muhammad offered me a job, we were sitting in his kitchen, and he was thinking of what he was going to do after he retired from boxing, and he goes, one of the things I want to do is start a nonprofit organization like the one you're with. And he said he was going to call it World Organization for Rights, Liberty, and Dignity Foundation. He wanted me to work for him directly so I could start the organization. So he said, how much are you making? And in 1976, I was making, you find this hard to believe, but $24,000. That was my annual salary plus commission, which made it maybe $30,000. He said, I'll give you $50,000 if you work for me. And I go, ooh, that's a pretty good offer. Muhammad, I have to tell you, and I thought about this before he even asked me. I said, I would never. I saw what was going on around him, the people who were, hangers on, and I didn't want to be involved in the fight game at all. Anybody that was involved with boxing and him, I wanted to stay away from. On the other hand, when he's saying he's going to start a nonprofit organization, that I can deal with. But he wanted me to work for him directly, and I begged off by just saying, Muhammad, if I had to get a paycheck from you and I had to work for you, number one, I would be thinking about it 24 hours a day if I'm doing a good enough job. I would be so worried about doing a good job for you that I probably wouldn't be as effective as someone else who you could hire who is much better at managing. But I really don't feel like I'm the right person. And besides that, our friendship would suffer if I took that job. Then he said, "You're not as dumb as you look." And he said that, he said, "Okay, let's. What about this? What about if I get the organization started, the World Foundation, and then you can work for the foundation rather than for me?" "That I'll do," I said. So the next thing I know, he was saying, "Get your bags packed." This was in January, I think. And then the next thing in March, he says, "Tell Helga to get your bags packed. You're going with us to L.A." He was moving with Veronica to L.A. to start to set up his headquarters for the World Foundation. And he was flying out. I was going to drive his rolls out to L.A. And so it was Veronica, Muhammad, Layla, and Hannah. Layla was just born. And so we were six of us were going to move to L.A. And we did move to L.A. And for the first 6 weeks, Helga and I lived with Muhammad and Veronica until we found a home to live in. But the reason we did live there is because we were setting up the World Foundation, and the corporate office was Muhammad's home office. So that was the headquarters for World Foundation. So that was why I was there. But anyway, it eventually we got Lonnie Rex was the CEO of an organization called Christian Crusade. And the Christian Crusade was based in Tulsa. And they had membership of 5 million members. And Lonnie Rex said, "How are we going to get the seed money from Muhammad's World Foundation? Well, we're just going to put out a newsletter and ask all of our members to contribute $1 to Muhammad Ali's World Foundation." And they did. And they got over $2 million for the seed money to start the organization. So that was the beginning. That was in 78 when Muhammad retired. I mean 79. Muhammad retired in 79. Big party at the Forum. Performed. Lola Falana wrote a song for him. Billy Crystal performed his 15 rounds. Lou Rawls hosted it. I mean, it was a big retirement party at the Forum. "Oh, great! Muhammad's retired, and we can go into the World Foundation right now. We can start it up tomorrow or next week." So we did, and then they did a European tour, a retirement tour in Europe, and Barry Frank, who was Muhammad's agent, business agent, set up a European retirement tour, and they went to Europe for a month. And so he was retired, right? Well, about, I don't remember how many, 6 months later, he gets a call from Don King, and they say, "Muhammad, we got a fight for you. We got Larry Holmes." And he goes, "Larry wants you." Larry Holmes was a former sparring partner of Muhammad's and loved Muhammad. He was the present heavyweight champion. And Don King said to Larry, he said, I can get you $6 million for this fight if you fight Ali." He said, "I'll fight Ali for $6 million." So Don King called Ali, and Ali thought about it for about 30 seconds. "I'll do it." So he's out of retirement after one phone call. And anyway, that went on, and he went back to fighting. He went back to Deer Lake, and we dissolved the organization. We had to, because we got a tax-free status for the nonprofit organization, for the government. And to do that, we had to sign Muhammad up as the CEO and president, and he had to participate in the organization at least 20 hours a month. And he wasn't willing to do that. And so we had to dissolve it. That's the enigma that Muhammad is. He goes, one day he's retired, the next day he's not.
Yeah, of course, when the man at his stature and his abilities, there are certain things that are just black and white, and there are certain things that are just enigma. And you were close to both of that.
Yeah, I would say that you asked me about the 40-year friendship. I always say this to Muhammad and Veronica and Helga. I said, without the four of us, there probably wouldn't have been the two of us. So the fact that Veronica and Helga were involved in this friendship is the reason that it lasted so long. And second reason is that Muhammad trusted me, and he trusted me so much with being alone with Veronica. Veronica and I spent a lot of time alone together. Helga would go back to Germany for 6 weeks or 8 weeks, visiting her family, and had some business back there. So I was alone with Veronica. I mean, I wasn't alone with her, but Muhammad's in Deer Lake, Helga's in Germany, and Veronica and I are together. I told Muhammad in front of Veronica and Helga, I said, Muhammad, you trust me so much, and you know I would never betray your trust. And he goes, I know that, brother. And he said, neither would Veronica. So that was the moment when he really did trust us, and he had no problem with it. But he knew that I loved Helga, and Veronica loved him. So I think he didn't have a problem. He said, you are brothers by chance, but you are friends with the heart. Something like, you need your heart for friends, but you're brothers by chance. So he used that line for me.
Very endearing and very, very thoughtful.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons, why he didn't stay retired wasn't just the money, of course. He loves the limelight, but he loves being with people. He loves the adulation of people. And he missed that greatly. And everybody that knows him knows he wants to be surrounded by people giving autographs. I'll give you a story about why he wants to give autographs to anybody and everybody who wants his autograph. He was in New York City when he was 16 years old, and he was fighting in the Golden Gloves tournament. And one of the trainers said that he knew Cassius Clay's idol, Sugar Ray Robinson. And the young Cassius says, you're kidding. Can I meet him? And the trainer said, well, you might get lucky. He owns a restaurant 12 blocks from here. And he's there almost every Friday and Saturday night. And that night was Friday. So he told him the directions, the address of the restaurant. So that night, he told me the story. It was pouring rain, and he walked 12 blocks in the rain and then got to the restaurant and stood under the awning for about an hour. And the trainer said, you'll be able to spot Sugar Ray because he's driving a red Cadillac. Sure enough, and he parks it in front. Sure enough, the red Cadillac comes up, pulls up. Sugar Ray gets out of the car. Muhammad's got his wet paper and pencil in his hand, ready to. He was going over in his head what he was going to say. Sugar Ray Robinson, I'm your biggest fan, and I wanted to. And as he walks past, he says, can't you see I'm busy, kid? And walked right past him. Muhammad sat down on the curb in the rain and cried. And he said, people will forget what you say. People will forget what you do. But people will never forget how you made them feel. And that was what he tells me as to why he wants to sign every autograph for the people who want his autograph.
Fascinating.
And another thing that people ask me is, is Muhammad happy? Is he really happy? Even all of the years when he was fighting, and then he was retired, and then he has Parkinson's. When he got his Parkinson's, Muhammad told me once, he said, I get up every morning and God tests me, and every day I pass his test. So that's how he says that God is testing him with the Parkinson's. Muhammad was never, just so you know, he was never completely at peace with his fame and fortune. He never could stop thinking about all the people living in the slums of America, both black and white. He always mentioned black and white, not just the black kids. He used to have a dream where he was up on a hill he still has this dream, or at least as far as I know. He used to have a dream where he was up on a hill in a mansion overlooking the city with a Rolls Royce in his driveway. And in between his home and the city were the slums. He couldn't go into the city without passing through the slums. And this is how he felt every day, that he had to pass through the slums when he was going to a destination, worrying about the poor and the hungry. When he lost a fight, of course, anytime he lost a fight, he wasn't happy. But his attitude was, well, everyone in life loses sometime. Sometimes it is how you handle that loss that counts. The one who overcomes that loss and makes a success in his life, then this is a true winner in life. I remember him. I could quote that every day, because when he said that, I said, boy, what a great attitude he has. It is how you handle loss that counts. The one who overcomes that loss and makes a success in his life, then this is a true winner in life. Yeah, he's an inspiration to many people, and he always says that he wants to be an inspiration, and because of that, he gets up and tries again. If there's a chance that you can win again, he said, I'll try again.
What an inspiring story and a role model for many young people of today, and that we all can learn from him.
Yeah, I love that quote about when he says, people will forget what you do, they forget what you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel. That was a direct from Sugar Ray Robinson gave him that just because of what he did to him. Oh, I have a neat story about, I always ask him about sports, and why didn't you play other sports, Muhammad? I mean, you're such a gifted athlete that you could have played any sport. Why didn't you play wide receiver on football, for instance? You would be a tight end or a wide receiver. He said he didn't like team sports because he always said he'd rather do it alone. He didn't trust anyone else to have the determination that he has. He hated to lose, and he knew that his teammates would not have that same desire not to lose. That's always he said. They wouldn't have the desire not to lose. So he always had that. I said, but you would have been a good football player. He says, well, you have to wear those bulky uniforms. You have a helmet on your head. People can't see your face. They don't know who you are. I want people to see me when I'm doing my thing. The big thing was what you have a helmet on your head. Nobody can see you.
And that's how he became the most recognizable face on the earth.
That's right. And the question about, you said to Andy Warhol, you brought him up. That was a curious situation. He was not the best subject for Andy Warhol, because the day before, Veronica and him just had flown back from London. They were in London at the time, and he had jet lag. And that, I think, was the real reason why he wasn't too anxious to do the session with Andy Warhol. But the second reason is he felt very uncomfortable with his personality. But he did take photos, and he did have those terrific lithographs. I don't know how many he actually had, but there were a bunch of them. But Muhammad has 4 hanging in his dining room in Scottsdale, Arizona. He had pretty much a good relationship with everybody, but he had. I'm thinking of, now I forgot his name. The painter that the sports painter, the painter that painted all his fights, and it's slipping my mind right now, but I'll remember it before I hang up. But anyway, he had a real good relationship with him, and Muhammad's father was an excellent artist. He made his living painting murals and painting signs in the city. That was his living, and Muhammad picked up some of his talent, not much, because Rahman, his brother Rahman, is a very talented painter. So they got something from their father, Cassius Sr.
Was it Leroy Neiman?
Leroy Neiman, that's what? How could I forget that? But anyway, Leroy Neiman, they were close, and he had some sessions with him where he thought that Muhammad had great talent and he would be a great artist. Muhammad sketches, but it's not professional. You can see that it's Muhammad Ali's art the first time you see it. But Muhammad's father was an artist, but he was a really a talented guy as far as singing. He was a dancer. He was a real entertainer. He loved the Perry Como and Nat King Cole, and he had a record player. I actually have a photo of the record player that Muhammad had as a young boy. They still have it. Rockman has it, but I have a photo of it. And the standard 78 record player that you put one side on and you turn it over and play the other song. But he would listen to Nat King Cole and Perry Como and Pat Boone and all these things. But the one that really stuck out was when Elvis Presley came on the scene, and his father played an Elvis Presley record. I think it was "Don't Be Cruel." That's the one he always sings nowadays. But as soon as he heard that song, and then he saw him on Ed Sullivan, Muhammad said at 15 years old he wanted to be Elvis. I mean, that's how enthralled he was with Elvis. And at that time, anything that Elvis did, he was interested in. When Elvis bought his mother a pink Cadillac after his first paycheck, I think, Muhammad said, "When I become famous, I'm going to do the same thing." So when he was in his first professional fight, I think he was 19 years old, his first professional fight, he got $8,000. And the first thing he did was buy his mother a pink Cadillac. And in those days, in 1962, I think our car that we bought, a Chevy Biscayne, cost like $2,500. So a Cadillac must cost twice as much. So it was maybe $5,000 or $6,000. But he bought a new Cadillac for his mother, and they call her Mama Bird. Her name was Odessa, but he called her Mama Bird. Cassius Sr. gave her the name Bird because she was cute as a bird, and her nose was like a bird. She got a tiny nose, and she talked like a bird. She had a high-pitched voice. "Hi, Muhammad, this is your mama." Anytime she talked, it was very quiet and very pronounced. And so Cash Sr. named her Bird. But anyway, the reason that I bought you a convertible, Mama, is that I want you to ride around Louisville and show everybody that you have the greatest son on earth. Cassius Clay Jr. just bought his mother a brand new Cadillac. That's Cassius Clay's mother. So that's why he bought the convertible, so everybody could see her. I think the biggest thing I can say, again, is if you think of Muhammad Ali, if I think of Muhammad Ali, I think of love. When I wrote the book, I told Veronica, I said after I wrote the book, I said, "Remember, Veronica, when you're reading this book, it's all about love." And that is what I wanted to get across. And Muhammad has the biggest heart, a pure heart, a heart of gold. By the way, I'll get off on a tangent here. He used to, when he was in forced retirement for 3.5 years, he gave talks at college campuses. He'd get paid, $2,000, $3,000 to give a talk at Harvard, at Southern University, Grambling. He would go to all these college campuses and give talks. So to do that, he would write out 45-minute speeches. He would not just type. He didn't type anyway, but he would write out longhand on a 5x7 index cards, not the 4x6, but the 5x7 index cards, and he would write out a 45-minute speech, something on the heart, the purpose of life, black and white, the meaning of love, the meaning of friendship. He had 45-minute speeches, and he had them wrapped with a rubber band. So in his briefcase, he would carry a legal pad and 5 or 6 of these speeches. I asked him, "How many did you write in total all those years?" And he said about 18 or 20. And the ones I saw, he only had about 8. But so he memorized them all. So he's got a quick wit, he always was disappointed that he didn't get a higher education, and that's why he respects all these people who do have that college education and are doctors and heads of states and banks. He always respects them. But the regret he has, to me, I couldn't believe it. I was kind of shocked that he would say, I wish I would have learned how to read and write. And this guy with quick wit and such a great mind, and I couldn't believe he was saying this. And I think most of the world would be shocked too that he said it, because of the way he can communicate with the world. So I think that's pretty much. Do you have any more questions?
No, you've been very natural and gifted speaker as well, and communicator. So I don't have to interrupt you at all. You had a very closed and very unique perspective with the greatest, and certainly you shared a new perspective and light that most of us would have never had opportunity to enjoy and experience. And I think a large number of our readers or listeners will be very happy to have that perspective that you bring to the table here.
Oh, great. One last thing is, I love Muhammad Ali. I'll end with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have been talking to Tim Shanahan, the author of Running with the Champ.